Who's looking out for you?
He's out there. Well, good evening and welcome everyone to our regular city council meeting of April 13th. So glad to see you here. And clerk, will you please take the roll?
Mayor Hartke,
Present.
Vice Mayor Orlando,
Here.
Councilmember Encinas,
Here.
Councilmember Ellis,
Here.
Councilmember Stewart,
Here.
Councilmember Harris,
Here.
Councilmember Poston.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you so much. Our invocation tonight will be brought by Reverend Sarah Oglesby Dunnigan from the Valley Unitarian Universalist Congregation. Reverend, and our Pledge of Allegiance by Vice Mayor Matt Orlando.
God of many names and no name at all, be with these leaders and community members today. Help them to listen more deeply, to ask more questions, and to hold this community and its needs in the center of their decisions. Help them to consider far into the future and to learn from the past. Help them to learn and grow as leaders and as humans, shaping this community for other humans. Bless this community with compassion, integrity, and true leadership. For all of this we pray and give thanks for your guidance and love. Amen.
Amen.
Please join in honoring the America with pledge allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And Mayor,
Thank you, Reverend.
Mayor, I apologize. I was talking to a former Air Force guy like I was, and we were talking about old airplanes, so I apologize.
You are forgiven from myself and council. Council, we had a robust conversation on Monday related to the consent agenda. Unless someone would like to pull something to action, a motion would be in order.
Mayor,
Councilmember Harris.
move to approve the consent agenda of April 13, 2023, regular meeting items 1 through 16.
I second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Harris, a second by Councilmember Encinas. Any recusals, explanations?
Mayor.
Councilmember Harris. No, Councilmember, I'm sorry.
You're looking
Councilmember
good every
Stewart.
day.
Thank you. You must be better dressed. Hey, I just want to make a note on item number 3, which is the short-term rentals. I had voted no against that on their first time around. I've talked with staff, and I understand that the added tax to this particular ordinance is not going to be in effect until we talk about it in a little bit more detail. So I'll be voting yes on number 3 tonight, but I did want to explain my change of vote, and that's because the policy is good. It fits within the state statute, and we can talk about the fees that could be associated with that later. Thank you.
Very good. Council, please vote.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, clerk. We do have 2 presentations called in tonight. Item number 17 is a briefing and discussion regarding the Chandler Police Department collaboration with Solari for crisis response services, including training of 911 operations, policy development, and referral of non-emergency mental health calls. It's requested by Councilmember Harris. Chief.
Well, good evening, Mayor, members of council. If I can figure this out, give me 1 second here. I'm going to ask the fire chief to come forward and help me with the AV equipment. I'm serious. Ken, this is a remote.
Man, that's the first time he asked for fire support.
All right.
You got a friend in me.
All right. So there we go. All right. On a more serious note. So a little over a year and a half ago, some of you may recall, I spoke with council about some protocol changes we made operationally in our emergency call center, specifically related to calls involving mental health. And back in August of 2021, we adjusted our guidelines and began to defer a very limited amount of calls to Solari Crisis Network. And since then, we've been able to divert almost 300 calls to Solari. So those are calls that in the past officers would respond to. In this case now, we've had 300 instances where we've been able to defer that call to Solari instead of dispatching an officer. So last July, council approved funding to contract with Solari and embed a crisis counselor inside our communication center. And the counselor, the whole intention behind that is to have that person come in and look at our policies and procedures, identify other calls that could be diverted to Solari, and provide training basically to our dispatchers and our officers. And while they're on scene, then actually act as decision makers on other calls that could be actually transferred over, and then track and count the progress over time. So in December, last December, council approved a service agreement with Solari. And on March 21st, police announced that we identified a person and they started um, working in our dispatch center on March 21st this past year. They work 20 hours a week. They work on Tuesdays and Fridays from noon to 10:30. And this agreement is for 1 year. We're using one-time funding, and we will be coming back in the upcoming budget request asking for another year. So the whole intention behind this relationship exists and elsewhere in the valley, and we conservatively estimate that we can divert at least 800 calls, we're predicting, and likely more over the course of a year. So if we're able to do that instead of sending officers to a scene, that's a great win. So that's the update on where we are right now, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Chief. I appreciate the presentation. You've answered all my questions. I just want to make a couple of comments. I think this is a great program, how we're addressing mental health and how we're using our resources properly. We want to make sure our officers are taking care of the issues that matters to our to crime and things that keeps our community safe. And this aspect, we want the professionals to handle these type of issues because as they say, sometimes it's above the pay grade in which you're getting paid to do, and sometimes people have different expertise. So I just wanted to give the community an update. You giving me an update. I think this program is working good, and I hope that mayor and council continues to support diversion programs like this to help us with our mental health issues in our community. So thanks, Chief. Thanks, Mayor.
Any additional comments? Vice Mayor.
Thanks. Chief, just a clarification. You said Thursday and Friday or Thursday through Fridays?
Thursday and Friday for a total of 20 hours per week.
So question for you, and have you done a deeper dive to see if we added additional days that what we would accomplish?
So this is a beta program, and we just started just over two weeks ago. So the
Oh, okay.
intention is to start this. Let's get a year's worth of data, let it play out. We anticipate between 800 and 1,000 calls, but we're not going to know until it's over. And one of the responsibilities will be to track all those type of calls, so we have a better understanding a year from now what the results have been and what we can do moving forward.
Okay. So I guess I'm confused. We're only doing this 2 weeks now? I thought we
2
put
days
this
a
in-
week for a year. This is a 1-year
Oh,
program.
I-
Just started.
yeah, but okay,
March.
so, yeah, I heard, thanks, Mayor. So we just started March, but I thought we put funding in this last year. Why did it take so long to?
Right, because it's a process. So we need to have a service agreement. They had to hire someone. They had to identify another person to bring on board. They had to go through a background process. So things are slow.
Okay,
Things
all
don't
right.
happen overnight, unfortunately. So it just took this time. It took this long to get that person actually starting, which although the
Okay.
money was approved on July 1st, weren't able to kick this off until March.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Mayor.
Mayor. Oh,
Councilmember Ellis and then Councilmember Poston.
thank you, Chief. I mean, this is such an amazing time for me to sit here and hear this thing come to fruition. We had this discussion in 2019 when I sat down in your office and you literally told me out of the 3% of those that you interface with, 2% of them all having some mental illness difficulties. And at that time, as a psych nurse, I understood that if you had that kind of help with a triage professional to understand when they get a call, where to funnel that call, and then also to work in consort with having a unit that can specialize in that area to go out specifically for those calls, and that you will be able to make an impact in our community that has never been done before. And so I'm so proud of this program. I'm very thankful that a city manager, thank you so much for pushing the agenda and making sure. And I want to thank mayor and council for saying yes to it along the way and then putting actually our money where our mouth is. And so thank you again for continued leadership in that area. And I know you're going to continue to grow this program and the people of Chandler will benefit the most out of it. Appreciate you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Poston.
Chief, I just wanted to clarify. Did you say you're anticipating about 800 to 1,000 calls over the next year to be
Correct.
diverted?
Correct.
Okay. And then will there be like a dollar amount or an hours, a year from now when you come back and begin to talk about it?
Well, we can look at those numbers. We can look at exactly how many calls, and we can extrapolate an estimate of what that would have cost
Perfect.
as far as staff hours responding to those calls. But again, some of those calls may last 15 minutes, and
Sure.
some may be 8 hours.
Sure.
So
Sure.
we can come up with an estimate.
Yeah, but it seems like it's a good investment as opposed to an expense if we look at it that way. So thank you.
It's an incredible investment, and this way we're able to use officers to do and respond to things that they're trained to do. And we're able to leverage outside resources to help the community.
And let the professionals deal with the issues that they're trained to do. Thank you. I love it.
Thank you, Chief, on this one. Item 18 is a briefing and discussion on current Chandler opioid data and public safety response protocols, as well as information regarding the One Arizona Opioid Settlement Funds Agreement and approved purposes and current and future distribution as requested by Councilmember Harris. And Chief, before you get up there, Council, I hope that, again, without knowing more of the funds, and we'll have opportunity to have a robust conversation of where funds could go in the future. So this is more of a baseline, if I'm not correct. Is that correct, Councilmember Harris? Very good. Sir.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and Council. So what I want to do tonight is give you a quick briefing on our 2022 opioid overdose data. And then after a few slides, I'm going to turn it over to Dawn, who's going to talk about the actual settlement agreement. So in 2022, the Chandler Fire Department responded to 767 overdose incidents. For us, an overdose incident is any type of absorption, ingestion, injection of some type of substance that goes into the body, has some type of systemic result where the patient becomes systemically, somehow their health is compromised. 911 call is placed and we respond. Within that umbrella, it's not just opioids, it's alcohol, it's other prescription medications. It can even be chemicals that are underneath the sink. So 767 total incidents. Of those incidents, 505 either had a direct or indirect correlation to opioids. The reason that is that when we see overdose patients, they are usually overdosing on multiple medications. So it can be an alcohol and opioids, it can be some type of benzo and opioids, or it can just be opioids. We can't truly determine what is causing the overdose. That comes from the hospital through post-discharge, blood draws, things like that. But we know we were on scene and there was an opioid present. Either the patient's family verbally stated it, or we saw something, pill bottles, for heroin, needles, something like that. So that's a total of 66% of our overdose calls. that are directly tied or directly or indirectly tied to opioids. Now, I did give a presentation back in 2018 for the Public Safety Subcommittee. I believe the Vice Mayor was part of that presentation. I'm going to bring you back to some of those numbers just to show you where we've come from. And so in 2018, we had 422 overdoses within our response areas. Of those 422, only 20% were actual tied to indirectly or directly to opioid drugs. When we look at the demographics of our patients, and these are specific patients that that it's confirmed that opioids are present, we know that 60% are male, 40% are female. These numbers that we see here on this chart are consistent with the state. The state has a dashboard that they update almost daily. And so all of our numbers I back checked to see where we are, benchmark it across the state, and we're pretty consistent. When we look at the age of our patients, from 20 to 29 years old, that accounts to 18% of our opioid overdoses. And then the highest is our 30 to 39 is 24%. If you combine those two together, it's 42% between 20 and 39. The significance of this number is that when we look at opioid prescriptions, over 70% of all prescriptions are for 55 and older. And so that tells you that these aren't necessarily prescription drugs that's prescribed by a doctor that they're overdosing on. So we look at the drugs. What type of specific opioids are these individuals taking? Again, I said that we don't have the ability to do the lab work to determine what it is, but we do get this information post-discharge from the hospitals. They have an obligation to report it to the state. And so this is state data from 2022. Right now, 64% in 2022 of all opioid overdoses were from fentanyl. I went back to 2018, it was 12.7%. So it has skyrocketed from 13% to 64%. As of today, 2023 is on pace to be 79% of all overdoses that are tied to opioid is from fentanyl. Oxycodone, which is a prescribed medication, is 13% in 2022. If we go back to 2018, it was 28.8%. So again, what we're seeing is the actual prescription, the prescribed medications that are opioid, those overdoses are coming down. Other medications is at 18%, and those are all the other prescriptions. It was at 45% in 2018. A lot of that is due to the fact that in 16 and 17, Governor Doug Ducey put legislation into effect that really clamped down on physicians and their ability to prescribe opioids. In fact, what they did was they created a database, whereas if you were, some people call them pain seekers, where you were doctor shopping with the same chief complaint trying to get medicine, once you hit 4 doctors, 4 prescriptions, it would flag the system and they would know to stop that. I can tell you the results of that legislation and really a push by AZDHS. In 2018, there was 3,700,000 opioid prescriptions delivered in Arizona. In 2022, it was 2.3 million. So we've seen almost a 1.4 million prescribed opioid reduction in the system, which is really good. Unfortunately, it's being replaced with fentanyl. Heroin is another big mover. On the one end of the spectrum, fentanyl is growing. Heroin in 2018 was 25%. So every overdose in the state of Arizona that was reported, and this is post-discharge information, was attributed to heroin. In 2018, 25%. Today, it's 3%. And so the trends continue to change on us. I think that you probably all know this, but I'm going to say it again anyways. The biggest danger here and why I believe we are seeing more overdoses is the fentanyl is so much more powerful than any of these other drugs. And so you can take heroin, and certainly we've had overdoses with that, but you can take fentanyl and it's 100 times worse. Some of the overdoses, just reading through the state's website, there's no intent to overdose. It's discharge directions, and instead of taking 1 pill, they take 2. But it's so powerful that you can have respiratory depression, you can have altered level of consciousness. And so they are seeing a lot of overdoses as I said, that what they're calling is accidental, right? There is absolutely no intent to do that. But this speaks volumes, and we've seen nationwide that the fentanyl crisis is continuing to grow, and it's certainly happening here in the state of Arizona. When we look at the Chandler Fire Department and the calls that we ran in 2022, I took the three on the EMS side of the house. The three most prevalent calls were fall injuries at 17%, and we run around 24,000 EMS calls. Altered level of consciousness, which is our strokes, diabetic emergencies was at 10%, respiratory emergencies, which is asthma, CHF, COPD, was at 9%, and overdoses were at 4%. And back in 2018, it was at 2%, so it has doubled. It's still relatively low for our community when we compare it to the other, nature codes for 911. But we certainly do have some overdoses within our system. There was a specific question about Narcan use. And as you know now, there's been a lot of news on Narcan. Narcan is a drug that you push. It will bind to the receptor sites in your brain, where opioid, if you think of opioids as a key and these receptor sites as locks, the opioid will go in there. That's what gives us our pain relief, that feeling, that high feeling that people get. When you push Narcan, Narcan goes in and it blocks the key. And so within seconds from when we push Narcan, we will get a patient that will turn around. Even if they're so respiratory depressed, a lot of times these people will come up right away. What did we see in 2022? Well, we administered it 342 times. That was our paramedics. Uh, that's a lot higher than 2018, which was at 82, but I'm going to explain a little bit on one of the reasons why. Bystander administration. This is something that you can buy over the counter now. So we're seeing more and more people in their homes that have Narcan. They're administering it through the nasal cavity. We get on scene, we do an assessment, and we will ensure that the patient has come around, but we are seeing a lot more of this. And then finally, our police officers have the ability and the training and the drug itself to administer Narcan, and they are certainly using those when it's presented with that opportunity. One thing with Narcan, and it's really important that you understand this, is 342 times that we administer it does not mean that those were 342 people that were having an opioid problem. Narcan is essentially the only diagnostic drug that we have, that we carry as paramedics. And what that means is, this is our response protocol. We'll do an initial assessment of the patient. What we're trying to determine is what is their level of consciousness. We will literally put our knuckles into their chest and try to get some type of painful response to see if they come up. If they don't, if they are not responsive to pain, we know that they're far enough down that now their respiratory system is compromised. First thing we'll do is we'll check their blood sugar. Whether your blood sugar is high, but generally it's when it's low, it will mimic what an overdose will look like. If their blood sugar is good, if it's within its normal ranges, then we are going to push Narcan. Does not mean that they are overdosed on opioids. But if we push it and that patient comes back right away, it is confirmed that it's an opioid. If we push it and they don't, then we move on. We start assessing for strokes. We start looking for any other type of trauma, anything else that could be going on. So when I say that all 347 aren't opioids, a lot of times we're using it as a diagnostic tool. Obviously, once we push the drug, if they respond, we will transport that patient. The police department also has protocols that are very similar to us. They will arrive on scene. They will assess the level of consciousness of the patient. Based on their assessment, they will not check blood glucose. They will go right to the nasal Narcan. They'll push that. If the patient obviously comes to, they know that it's an opioid. If it's not, then that's pretty much where they stop. Part of their protocol is they're calling for us right away. This is a care that has to be handed over to a paramedic. So we will get these patients from our police officers, and then we'll make the final determination as far as whether we transport or not. Okay, so that is all I have. I'd be happy to answer any questions, or I can turn it over to Don.
Councilmember Harris.
No, Chief, thank you so much for the presentation. I think this was important for this information to lay a basis of what we're dealing with, what you're dealing with, in making sure that our community is aware. And I appreciate the information that was shown in terms of the age group, because this is a part of that chart was showing our youth, which could be school age or in school. My only question is how are we, do we have a plan? Do we share this information with CUSD? Do we have a plan to speak to our youth about this? Is it something that is that outside of our purview as a city? How do we share this information? Because I think that's important, and for our CUSD or other schools, not just CUSD, but other schools to have this information.
Through the mayor, Councilmember Harris, we do not share our data with CUSD. We do share our data with the state of Arizona and with the hospitals. And then what the hospitals are required to do is every year they have to do a community needs assessment. And they have to identify what are the 5 biggest health risks to the city of Chandler. What are the 5 biggest social impacts that are causing those? And so it's about an 80, I think 90, I read it last night, 90-page document based off of that. And they have the same data we do. So we're sending our patients to them. Based off of that, they have to then make a plan on who they're going to partner with, whether it's nonprofits, whether it's the care center, the school, and then how are they going to convey that preventative information? How are they going to make sure that there's a level of awareness? What type of services that do they have to provide? And so, as I said, I did read that last night, the assessment for 2022. The 2023 assessment's not done. That's something that's coming soon. But I believe it was their number 2 priority as far as health goes, and it's opioid is in there, but it's substance abuse overall. And they had listed at least 15 different partners that they thought would be good partners to get that message out. Each one of these groups have a different mission on how to support it, whether it's education, whether it's treatment, whether it's just a full wraparound service. And so we don't directly give the numbers, but Dignity does, and we give our numbers to Dignity.
Thank you. I will probably reserve the rest of my questions for Dawn when she does the financial presentation
Great.
about the opioids.
Additional questions for Chief? Councilmember Ellis.
Chief, we talked about Narcan, and it is important for people to realize that it can also be available to those nonprofits. And those people that are trained can also administer that. It's not only the 911 when they get on scene that can administer it. I know some of the cities that are dealing with it on a regular basis. For example, we have a nonprofit that is downtown Phoenix every Sunday morning, and we carry Narcan. And so are we working with some of our nonprofit like AZ Sand and all these other one, like you mentioned, the care center, that if somebody that just step on the property and just collapse, that they can actually administer, or do they carry it? And what's going on with that in that area?
Through the mayor, Councilmember Ellis, right now we are not, we don't have the ability to provide the Narcan. Narcan is now sold over the counter. So before it was not. You had to get a grant, and then you had to get a prescription. I believe when the police department got theirs, it was through our medical directors. There was very specific training. Now you can go to any store, any drugstore, and you can get the Narcan. This drug will save their life. That's what it does. It immediately stops the effect, especially when somebody's in respiratory arrest or they're so far depressed that they just don't have the cellular respiration. But we don't, as a fire department or as a city, I don't have I would be happy to train people, but as far as getting the drug itself, we don't have a way of doing it. But it is widely available. And even within the past, since in the last 3 weeks, I've seen a lot of information on the regular news telling people to purchase this. And so I don't know if there's grant opportunities, but we would certainly train them. That would not be a problem.
That was what I was going to ask you next. Is there anywhere we can partner with any organization that has grant to help even Solari or some other organizations like, that really work with those kinds of clients? I know Southwest Behavioral Health could also be a great partner in that area if we could approach them and see if there's any way that we can, because it is over the counter, but those who need it the most, they probably will use the money to buy the drug versus buy knocking in order for them to do it. The other thing that I want to ask you is, can you expand on the idea of the fact that if I'm that far into respiratory distress and even a suppression, I can't administer Narcan to myself. So carrying Narcan and still taking drugs, how does that help anyone?
That's a great point, council member. Because as you get to the point where you realize you probably need Narcan, you're not really capable of self-administration because it is in the nose. And certainly if your respiratory system is compromised, there is no ability. So you are spot on. To have that in your pocket is not going to do you good. And as we know, especially with fentanyl, this is not a slow thing that happens. When that is absorbed and it gets into your bloodstream, you go from 0 to 100 very quickly. And as you know, it will knock out your ability to process information, critical information. And so I believe the thought or the hope is always that somebody within the house, we saw the 77 bystander administration, somebody within the house, somebody within, whether it's a business or whatever, that almost if we think about AEDs, we could potentially someday see Narcan in there as well, where when you see someone who's unconscious, who's not responsive, that you have the ability to do that. But yeah, that is a great point.
I want to clarify when you said that I know, it's just because I'm a nurse, not because that I use.
Clarification is right.
Thank you for the clarification.
That was close.
Yeah. Additional comments?
Mayor,
Councilmember Stewart.
I always look at cause and effect. It seemed to me that you mentioned that the governor had implemented a law that stopped people from getting what I would call regulated drugs or regulated opioids and if it were an addiction. And it sounds like the law actually, if I'm doing cause and effect, moved them to illegal non-metered fentanyl, which is causing more overdoses. Do you think, I mean, it's not really a question, it's more of a statement. It sounds like the intended purpose was to help people not be addicts, but what it ended up doing, it sounds like, is the law ended up making them go to illegal drugs, which is causing more of a stress on our system, more of a stress on our community, more of a stress on our families, and for those that are unfortunately had to lose family members because of this. So,
Yeah, Councilmember,
unfortunate.
I try not to make assumptions, just give you the raw data. But yes, we pushed it from a prescription-based problem to this synthetic fentanyl problem that's 100 times worse than the prescription.
Right.
So we moved it. It's not a static problem, and that's one thing I learned going through this. It's very dynamic, and it completely shifted on us. It was as a young paramedic when I started the job 25 years ago. It was always heroin. You know, that's what we saw. You knew, you could see it. Sometimes it was still in their arm, and we really trained to that. And today it's not. It's a drug that's far worse, far more potent. It's fast acting. It's long lasting. So it's dangerous. So yeah, it's moved. We shifted the problem. It was good intent, I believe.
Oh yeah.
And it worked. You can see the reduction in the amount of prescriptions, over 1 million, which is amazing. But at the same time, there was a void created and it was filled.
Oh, and the
First drug.
the cartels will move right in and take over that space, and that's exactly what they did. And so you're seeing it coming in over the border. It's a crisis, and it continues to be a crisis. So while I applaud legislators and the governor for trying to do something to help the community, this one seems like it's backfiring. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Chief. Dawn.
Okay. Mayor and Council, the next part of this presentation is regarding the opioid settlement agreement the city entered into March 1st, 2022. It actually represents a national opioid legislation or litigation settlement in which two significant opioid actions were reached, proposed settlements, final settlements. The first was the global settlement with 3 opioid distributors, and the second was opioid manufacturers, and there's 4 of them. So to date, we have entered into 2 of those agreements. And it allows the state and participating local governments to enter into these agreements. The settlement funds, once we enter in, are shared 44% with the state, 56% with participating local governments based on our population. The settlements funds have not been established as additional agreements with pharmaceutical supply chain participants continue to be entered into. And so, like I said, we've only so far entered into 2, so there's more to come. And then these local governments are allowed to use funds internally or can partner with community agencies or regional partners for many of the approved purposes, as long as accountability and reporting obligations are met. So as of 8 a.m. this morning, we had no idea what the reporting requirements were. And then at about 9:30, they landed in our inbox. So as of this morning, hot off the press, we now have that with training at the end of the month, because there's quite a bit of reporting around and obligation around accepting these funds. So next, and I don't, do you have the clicker to change the slide? I'm so sorry. Thank you for being my AV person. So then, thank you. So the next slide is broke down into requirements and then the funding we anticipate. The requirements are 70% of the funding received must be used for future opioid remediation. A maximum of 15% can be spent on opioid crisis-related reimbursement and administrative expenses, and then non-opioid remediation expenses are capped at 15%. Additionally, a report is required to be filed by July 31st annually, and so that's coming up real soon, because so far we have actually received 3 payments. So in the beginning, or when the litigation settlement information came out, it was reported that Arizona anticipates, and it's still an estimate, to receive about $549 million. And based on the fact that local governments will receive 56% of that, Chandler's estimate, based on our population and all those that opted in, would receive about 2.86. So Chandler could potentially receive up to 8.79 million. But that's over an 18-year period. So it ends up being about, on average, about $480,000 a year. So it lists here 3 payments that have been received to date. The first payment represented 2021's payment. 2022, we got a payment off each of those settlements, one from a distributor settlement and one from a manufacturer settlement. And of course, then our next step is to figure out how we're going to use those funds. So the next slide, we dug into the opioid settlement agreement that the city has received. And it lists here, it summarizes the approved purposes. So there's a lot of different details in this agreement, but the 3 main categories are treatment, prevention, and then other strategies. And I won't read through all these, but we have met as a team. If you go to the next slide, and the police department, fire department, the law department, and management services had some preliminary discussions based on the agreement. And these are some of the things that came out of our discussion, but certainly there's been no decisions yet on how these will be used. These funds are currently just sitting in our general fund. But these were obvious things, I think, that came up internally because we have seen increase in costs. But of course, we're also talking about how do we move the needle into the future? How do we, positively try to help turn around this crisis? We can certainly offset and do some of the to try to prevent overdose deaths, but there's so much more to this topic. So if you turn the page again, this is the last one, the next steps. We need to come together internally and assess our community needs. We need to determine if we need to include other partners. And then, of course, We now have obtained final reporting and accounting rules, but we will have to review those and go to the training and find out exactly what is required. They're written pretty high level, so I think there'll be a lot of questions from communities that have opted in. And then finally, that future conversation will come back to you with a recommended strategy for discussion. And with that, I'm
Councilmember
happy to
Harris.
answer questions.
Thank you so much, Don, and thank you, Chief. And I wanted to bring this forward not to really have just a discussion about it, but just to make sure Grant Woods fought for this for states to have to combat opioids and these issues, and the dollars that will be used for this. I know that the Josh and the city they have plans, but I wanted to more so bring it to us so we can know where we are, but also for council to, I would like council to be involved in the conversation piece of where and what we're going to be doing and how these funds are going to be used, moving forward. And there probably is a lot of questions, but I just kind of wanted to bring it forward just to kind of give council an idea that there is this issue here, and we're going to receive funds to address this issue. And I just wanted council, mayor and council to look at this and say, okay, let's put this forth to staff. There are some guidelines, but what does that look like? And to bring it back to mayor and council in some type of study session of some sort for our input, to make sure that we're doing everything we can to address the issues that pertains to our community. And I know that in our community, we do have these issues. That's why some of those dollars are coming. But I want to make sure that staff put forth, a strategy and for it to come back to mayor and council for us to review. That's all I had. I just wanted to bring it up. And then perhaps in the study session of some sort, we can get into more details and ask deeper questions. So with that being said, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember. Additional questions, Vice Mayor?
Thank you. So, Dawn, I know we just got some of the criteria today, literally. I guess my question is, we just heard the chief say opioid use is trending downwards, yet fentanyl is trending hugely upwards, almost leapfrogging. As we prepare this messaging, how do we incorporate other drugs that cause addiction to this? I mean, if we say the word opioid and other things, I mean, I'm concerned here that we'll be focusing just on opioids, the messaging, when really should be focusing on drug overdose in general.
Through the mayor, vice mayor, you're correct. This is not, although it's a large percentage, 66, I believe was the number percentage of our overdoses are directly or indirectly tied to opioids. We should not forget about the other 34%, because those can wreak havoc on your health and your life. And so it should definitely be a broader approach outside of just opioids to see, how, all of the other prescription drugs, alcoholism, what can we do from the city's perspective? We have a program called Community Risk Reduction, and we look at everything from what's happening with overdoses to how many children are falling off their bikes without wearing helmets. And it is we're currently going through that plan for our accreditation process, and we will be evaluated on it. But we are going to utilize all of the information through the hospitals to put a campaign together. I know some of you guys have participated in our Walk for Drowning. That was born out of that document of we're seeing more drownings. What can we do? And so what we may have to do is engage, those populations, engage the schools. But to your point, it's a broader message. It's
Okay.
not just specific to opioids.
So again, obviously, if it's a broader message and we may be hands tied, we got to figure out there's other resources that we could utilize to make it a broader message. But I guess my first point. Second point, and probably more critical question, is timelines. Obviously, we can't wait. My concern is that we do an assessment. We do some of this stuff that takes months and who knows how long, just get a consultant on board. In the meantime, people are dying. So how do we balance that and make this happen sooner rather than later?
Through the mayor, vice mayor, we roll up our sleeves and we put a plan together.
When
We
when will we see the plan, though? We got some thought process on that?
I know that we are going through a much larger scale, community risk reduction, but specifically to drug abuse and overdose. I'll be honest with you, we're responding to it. We're not preventing it right now. We are sending our crisis response unit. We're sending our police officers. We're sending our firefighters. Narcan is not a preventative measure, right?
Exactly.
Narcan is what you give after the
Reaction.
damage is already done. And so we can certainly sit down with our police department. We can sit down with the city manager's office. We can sit down with CAPA and figure out if we can, what type of message should we be putting out? What does that platform look like? What audience? We certainly have the data available to see who that is. We absolutely have to lean on the hospital,
Right.
because they are required to do that. So I think that and I was really, I was a little disappointed that in that community health needs assessment, when they talked about the partnerships, that the city of Chandler was not listed. And I think that's a miss. And so, we can start working through our relationships with the hospital to ask, how do we get engaged in this? How do we start messaging this, and what can we do? And as far as the timeline goes, we can.
I'll ask the city manager that. How's
Oh,
that? Is that fair?
I can start tonight if you want, but yeah.
No, seriously, city manager, obviously this is more than one department. The chief's put on the spot. I didn't mean to do that, chief, to you.
Okay,
Well, yeah, I did. Yes, that's God's honest truth. I did. The police chief told me to.
I got you.
Okay. Seriously, city manager, I know there's funding here of some sort. There is a compelling desire to get this sooner rather than later. So can you rally those forces and come back to us and give us some thought process on timeframes, and obviously sooner the better, because
Yeah.
people are dying.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, obviously we understand the seriousness of the issue and can certainly work quickly. Obviously, we just got
Right.
guidelines today, so
Right.
we need a little bit of time to understand what the rules are around the expenditure of these funds. We want to make sure we stay compliant, and also want to make sure that we do have a plan, so that we look at this in a logical and appropriate fashion. But we will certainly work quickly, knowing the seriousness of the issue.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, chief. Thank
City
you.
manager, it also does sound like, there was really two conversations here. Is one, we really don't want to spend this money until we know how we can spend it and get those questions. But on the other hand, how can we leverage our partnerships and other messaging to address what Vice Mayor is talking about? So I almost see some we can't fully do now, but there's some, how do we further leverage this message? So, any additional questions or comments? Okay. No? Okay. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Dawn. Next on our agenda is announcements, which I'll be starting. Today we had a pretty awesome.
Mayor?
That comes after that, I believe. Am I wrong? Let me check my agenda here. No. We do have one card. And we have a gentleman that's been waiting patiently. We have one unscheduled public appearance. Mr. Hunter, if you please come forward, state your name and address for the record. You've got up to 3 minutes to share your thoughts and concerns. Council cannot engage you as a result of public meeting policies, but we hear and staff will take your comments and get with you afterwards.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council, staff. Usually I don't get involved that much because you guys run a real good town. But we got a serious problem here. We better start taking a look at it, and that's these intersections. I have driven all over the world, and that includes Saudi Arabia, Seoul, Tokyo, Osaka. I've walked the streets in Beijing and Singapore and everywhere. And I can say this with all that experience, I have never been as concerned on either driving through an intersection or walking across the intersection as I am right here in Chandler. All right. And I will start. My daughter got into an accident a couple of weeks ago. She did everything right. Unfortunately, she was trying to make a left-hand turn. Somebody else gave an indication that they were going to stop. That was coming the other way. They changed their mind. They hit as a light turned red, and that's life. Okay, but I'll tell you, it's gotten to a point that I live on Ray Road. I don't cross the street at Ray and McClintock. I don't cross the street at Ray and Rural. And I know that the law doesn't like it, but I feel a lot safer when I cross at the mid block because I only have to look in two directions. Cars coming only two ways and I can see them. When you get involved in these intersections right now, there's a lot going on. You got people going left, they got the blinking yellow lights, you got people that are turning right, right turn, and you got bicycles, you got people that are paying more attention to their cell phones and stuff than what they're supposed to be doing. And I think, I don't have statistics, but I know every crash that I've seen here, and I've seen a lot of them, all of them are at intersections. Okay? This is not a safe place to be. And if I'm nervous about it, what does an 18, 19, 20 young year old have, are they going to have the same problem? And I think we can fix this. I think if we just made it simpler so that a person doesn't have to make a whole lot of judgment calls whenever they're trying to go through an intersection. In other words, left arrow only. All right. Make sure that when you got cars coming this way, they have the same kind of light. Where we have cars with green lights going this way, everybody over here stop. They got the turn lanes over here. These people are turning. We get a green light. We can't move because of the stream of cars that are still making left-hand turns. So I stood at the corner and watched how many decisions have to be made. And I think this is a serious situation because my daughter's going to pay for this. And she understands she was wrong. By the way, the police were fantastic. And they really felt bad that they had to cite her. But we understood it. So right now, I would love to see this city take this thing on. And anything that I can do to help in that, I would more than likely love to do it. Because if I'm nervous with my experience, what about everybody else?
And sir, would you please state your address for the record
it's
too in your remaining seconds?
It's 4155 West Shannon Street.
Great.
Shannon.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Is your daughter okay?
Yeah,
Did you say-
she actually came to a stop because she thought this person was going to stop or make a turn, and the person was a young person. So we have some suspicions, especially when the mother told the driver, "Don't say anything to the police. Let me do all the questions."
But she's fine. She's healthy.
Yeah.
All right, good.
But we couldn't prove it, and my daughter said, "Yeah, technically she's doing." So we did that. So anyway,
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
And staff, please listen to Mr. Hunter's comments, get with him, see what we can do. All right, finally, my next is announcements. I do want to give just a recap. Right before this council meeting, we had DEI discussion. Our diversity, equity, and inclusion DEI efforts are part of our strategic priorities, and today we reviewed the strategic plan developed by our DEI team. It has 5 goals to communicate, connect, develop, innovate, and assess in all areas of DEI. I do want to thank our staff, and especially Nikki Tapia, for the hard work on this plan. I know that council and I are fully invested in this work to be done and looking at the positive outcomes in our community. Second announcement, just a little while ago on March 31st, we celebrated Shields VIP Community Kickoff. We had many of us on council that were there that particular day, and I think Councilmember Poston sent her husband instead as she was busy doing
Representing
something
for
else.
me.
Yeah. So Shields is going to be 254,000 square feet of shopping goodness at our Chandler Fashion Center, taking over the old Nordstrom's facility there, and they'll be opening this fall. Look forward to more information. And lastly, I do want to invite council and our community. This Sunday, April 16th, we will have our 2nd annual Field of Hope in downtown Chandler, a candlelight vigil at AJ Chandler Park from 6 p.m. until 8 p.m. This has been an event that was started by the Exchange Club in Chandler and was occurring out in Sun Lakes, but as a result of a partnership between our one of our commissions are, the name escapes me right now. Our abuse, what's the one I'm thinking of? Our domestic violence. Thank you. Domestic Violence and the Exchange Club. They've put this together to do this event in downtown Chandler. There's going to be a field of flags to raise awareness about child abuse prevention, which is the month of April. And flags are put out as a memorial of the children who died across our state due to domestic violence the previous year. Each flag represents a life lost, and the flags will remain standing in A.J. Chandler Park West until Friday, April 21st. Council hope to see several of you there if you're able to make this Sunday. Councilmember Encinas.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, I just wanted to highlight a great collaboration between our city, our schools, and our community partners. On April 1st, in honor of Cesar Chavez Day, our neighborhood programs hosted an event right here in our downtown Chandler neighborhood, Pueblo Viejo. We had over 50 volunteers from NXP Semiconductors, Compass Christian Church, and the National Junior Honor Society. And we all pulled together to help clean up the alleyways, front yards, and help our neighbors do some spring cleaning here in the downtown area. And then the event was kicked off here at the San Marcos Elementary School with a pancake breakfast. Thank you to the Insight Enterprise team that made pancakes for everyone to enjoy, and the staff of San Marcos Elementary School who were able to distribute books to a bunch of students. Again, events like this and partnerships are what make our community stronger. So I just wanted to highlight this event. I wanted to thank everyone who came out on that Saturday to be part of that and be part of Pueblo Viejo. Shout out to Leah and Priscilla and her team, code enforcement, and the neighborhood program to help highlight this on such an important day for Cesar Chavez. So I look forward to more events like this in our traditional neighborhoods.
Great event. Councilmember Ellis.
Thank you, Mayor. I will be there for the TV because we started that with the Exchange Club. Was part of that. So I'm bringing it to Chandler. Thank you, Mayor, for saying yes to that too. Tonight, I would like to highlight that the month of April is our Earth Month. And in honor of that, we would like to give Mother Nature, as we call her, some love by celebrating Earth Day at our nature center that is located not too far from here in the south side of Chandler. The event is on Saturday, April 22nd from 9 a.m. It's going to be until 12 p.m. And as I said, it's going to be at the Chandler Nature Center. I encourage everyone to get out, take a stroll, get ready to ride your bike and find something fun to do outside. But it's hard, I know, on some of those that have allergies, but this is the time if you have to wear a mask or whatever you need to do. But get out. It's a good time now. Don't wait until it's too hot to get out and have a good time. Thank you, Mayor.
We've ordered some cooler weather just for you.
Thank you. We need it.
Vice Mayor.
Nothing tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Very good. Councilmember Stewart.
Thank you. Thank you. You can tell we're getting to the end of the school year. I saw a couple Perry history kids come strolling in here in the back. I can see them back there. Yeah, doing their who's class. I'll catch up with you afterwards. I know what the teacher that does that. My kids had to be in here for that. But hey, one of my favorite plant-related holidays is coming up. Arbor Day on Friday, April 28th, and it's important to remember that this is a day to celebrate trees, but more importantly, it is plant a tree. Make sure you prune your trees so they don't use as much water. We were talking about that earlier. And I'll just leave it right there.
Yeah.
May I say we need to plant some moringa tree, not those yellow things, right? Please.
I caught your joke anyway. That was for you. Councilmember Harris.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mayor. Today, just one announcement. I was able to participate with Micah's team, along with Representative Mayor and Council, on how to compete for government contracts. We invited people from the community to come to the city of, actually we did it in the city of Chandler. We had the state procurement lead person come, as well as our team with licensing, registration, and business. They all came, and the room was filled with energized small business owners who's just seeking to want to do business and want to do it the right way. And I was there. I was able to share some words. And let me just tell you, there were some tweetable moments, and there were some moments that you just wanted to snap your fingers like that. I was truly glad. Our team, Chandler, is amazing, and we're doing a great job in the city in terms of entrepreneurship and small business and promoting. It was amazing. I was looking pretty dapper in that picture too. So, thanks, Mayor. That's all I have.
I've got no comment. Councilmember Poston.
Thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, go plant a tree.
I had a couple of items myself, and one was also, related to small businesses. And it was that same sort of energy. And I was so happy to see the activation of the ASU Chandler Innovation Center. And I went to it's called the Chandler Endeavor Embark Series. It's the City of Chandler, the Chamber of Commerce, and ASU all partnering to work with small businesses. And that one was held on April 5th. There are two more. The next one's at 4 to 7 p.m. at the ASU Chandler Innovation Center. I highly encourage any small business to go. The energy in that room was amazing. I ran into small business owners that I hadn't run into in any other place. And so that was great. So just an encouragement to go to that. Another item that I did want to bring up is I went to the family Easter celebration. It was it was a Friday evening. I think Councilmember Encinas went as well. I didn't run into you.
I was there.
Okay, everybody was there.
Earlier.
All right, but
I was on time.
I was there early. No, but what I did want to point out, other than the fact that everybody was there, is that event typically had been held at Snedeker, and there's a lot of competition for Snedeker and that space. And it was on a Saturday morning, and I ran in and I talked to some of the event staff, and I will admit that when I was going that evening, I really didn't expect very many people. It was packed. So I just wanted to congratulate city staff for kind of taking a chance and trying something different and trying something new, because if you don't try something new, you will never know if it's going to be successful. And it might not have been, but it was an incredible success. So I was really glad to see staff out there trying something a little bit different, and even happier to see what a great success it was, because it sure encouraged all of our council members to come downtown. I actually walked across the street, had a little dinner downtown, came back. It was about 8:30 at night. There were still people in line with little ones trying to take pictures with the Easter Bunny. So anyway, just a quick congratulations there. And then a final note, Chief Duggan, thank you for asking or encouraging me to go on a ride along with Chandler Police. I went on a Monday evening, the swing shift. It was 2 to 11. And Officer Hazer put up with all of my questions all night long. But the professionalism, I wish I could name every single officer that was on shift that evening. But just to see the professionalism as they go from event to event was absolutely incredible. There's nothing like seeing it in person. And I just so appreciate that opportunity and what our police are doing out there. So thank you again, Chief, for inviting me to go. And those are my announcements for the evening. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Yeah.
I like to go the early mornings. I was hoping we'll get some hydraulics for the ride along. That's it.
City manager.
How many eggs?
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Two exciting things in my life right now. One is today's the last day of Passover, so I'm really excited to eat some bread for the first time in a week. So I'm going to make this next part short. But I did want to draw just a quick congratulations for our Chief Information Officer, Sandeep Dolokia. So he was named a finalist for what are called the Orbi Awards, which is, according to what I've been told, like the Academy Awards for Information Technology Executives in Arizona. So he's here in the audience tonight, and he perhaps even better for him, it's the same day as the all-day budget brief as the awards ceremony. So he'll be going a little later in the day while he's at the awards ceremony in the morning. But we are extremely proud of him. And all of his and his department's achievements, certainly very well deserved. So he will be one of the finalists competing for one of the awards here in just a few weeks. That's all I have tonight, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager. Thank you, Council. Vice Mayor needs to go and plant a tree, I understand. So that concludes our meeting.